Madam Deputy Speaker, the film is Groundhog Day. It sees Phil Connors go to a place where he wakes up every morning to the same DJ playing the same song. I've got you, babe, my sonny and Cher. And so we have, with the Chancellor, a very similar situation. Groundhog Day, going round and round, destroying the economy, putting up taxes, losing our fiscal headroom, and round it goes. It is the case, Madam Deputy Speaker, that this film was said to be a romantic comedy. Well, there's been nothing comedic about the results that this Chancellor has delivered in terms of increased unemployment, diminished living standards, higher inflation, and so on. And whether the public were ever enamoured with the Chancellor, I know not, but they certainly are not now, Madam Deputy Speaker. She is apparently the least popular Chancellor, according to the polls, in the history of polling on that question. And the question becomes, Madam Deputy Speaker, in part, I'll give way to my right honourable friend.
I'd like the introduction to the Shadow Chancellor's speech. Would a better film analogy perhaps be A Nightmare Before Christmas?
I think that's absolutely true. I think that's absolutely fair, that point that my right honourable friend has just made. But let's look, Madam Deputy Speaker, at how we ended up at this sorry pass. We had a party which, in opposition, assured the British electorate they would not be putting up taxes left, right and centre. And when they got into power, what did they do within a few short months? They slapped taxes, £40 billion worth, on the British people, 25 billion of that by way of national insurance increases on business alone. And no surprise, of course, that destroyed employment and growth. They talked down the economy. They came up with this idea of this confected £22 billion black hole. And what an irony it was. What an irony it was. There may be chuntering from the front bench, but what an irony it was that it was at the behest of the government themselves that the OBR were invited to look into this claim and said, and I quote, that they would not legitimise that figure. But the damage was done. The animal spirits in the economy were extinguished. And of course they did something else, which socialists down the ages always do, is they borrowed and borrowed and borrowed and spent and spent and spent until they ran out of other people's money. Other people's money. Mr. Speaker, the minister is having trouble containing himself, such as the punishment that he's receiving at the dispatch box at the moment. So they borrowed all this money, and what did that do? It stoked inflation. And with inflation higher, then interest rates have been higher for longer. And on inflation, the minister says from a sedentary position it's coming down. Well, the IMF says that inflation will be the highest in the G7 this year and next year. So what we know is that with high inflation, interest rates are higher for longer. That means businesses' costs on borrowing are higher. It means that consumer sentiment is dampened. It means that the burgeoning debt that this government is constantly adding to, the servicing costs on that alone, is currently £100 billion a year, twice what we spend on defence. In fact, if debt servicing were a government department, it would be the third largest in Whitehall. Not spending money on better public services, as we're often told by the party opposite, but simply paying for the profligacy of the party opposite when it comes to borrowing. And what about the run-up to this budget, Madam Deputy Speaker? What a farce. We have seen weeks and weeks of uncertainty generated by the Treasury, who have leaked every possible combination of tax increases and then U-turned on some of them, flown so many kites that they have blotted out the sun, and a huge shadow has been cast across businesses who have pressed pause on investment and hiring. Speak to Andy Haldane, I say to the minister opposite. He concludes that what I am saying is absolutely right. And it has weighed down on consumer sentiment. It has done, all this hokey-cokey around what is in the budget, has done real damage to our economy on this government's watch. And I will give way to my right honourable friend.
I'm very grateful, my honourable friend. My right honourable friend did a service to this House a week or two ago when he drew exactly what he's describing now to the attention of this chamber. He told the government then that these leaks were not only doing damage in the way he described to the economy, they were also a discourtesy to this House. Many times, Madam Deputy Speaker, you and Mr Speaker have said that announcements should be brought here first. It is fundamental to this place that what the government announces is brought here and is scrutinised here, not in the public realm. I'm grateful to my honourable friend.
Well, my right honourable and gallant friend is entirely right, as usual. And it is also the case, Madam Deputy Speaker, that something else has been going on. And I have written to the OBR to ask Richard Hughes exactly what has happened in terms of the information that the Treasury appears to have been leaking out about the forecast during the run-up to the budget. And I say this given that the OBR's own guidance says that the information exchanged with the Treasury during the build-up to a budget is provided in confidence to ministers. Why is it then, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the Chancellor herself should be out on the airwaves before the budget opining on the apparent coming downgrade to productivity? So I have written to the OBR to ask whether they feel that that is appropriate. I've also written to the Permanent Secretary at the Treasury to ask him if he is implementing an investigation into the leaks coming from the Treasury. He has written back to me, interestingly, just simply to say that in the event that there are suspected leaks, of course there is an investigation. He hasn't quite answered my question as to whether there is one being undertaken at the moment, but I will be following him up on that matter. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, what has happened in this budget? Well, the OBR forecasts tell a sorry story. Unemployment higher in every single year of the forecast than they were forecasting back in the spring. Inflation up. And we've seen the latest ONS figures on inflation, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is the party that talks about resolving poverty. A disgrace that food inflation, in the last set of figures, went up way above the headline rate, from 4.5 to 4.9%. That is being borne by some of the most vulnerable and poorest in our society. And on growth, of course, the Chancellor speaks a good story. She says, well, growth has been forecast up compared to the spring in this year. But it's forecasted down, as the gentleman opposite will know, compared to the autumn of last year, when the OBR said that growth would be 2% in this year. It is now forecast to be 1.5%. And in every subsequent year after this year in the forecast, growth is lower than was forecast back at the time of the spring statement. That is a simple fact. And we'll come on to why that is the case. What has happened to borrowing? You'd have thought they'd have learnt the lesson that ever-increasing borrowing always leads to disaster. But no, there is 11 billion of additional borrowing, on average, every year of this forecast. And what has that done to living standards? Real household disposable income, the economist's measure of economic well-being, is down in every single year of this forecast compared to the forecast in the spring. And in fact, the OBR says, and the honourable gentleman will like this one, the OBR says that real income growth across this forecast will be well below the average of the last decade. So don't point a finger at the last government when it comes to living standards. It is there in black and white. I will in a moment. It is there in black and white in the OBR's report. And the reason for this, Madam Deputy Speaker, £26 billion of additional taxation in 29-30, and as the honourable gentleman will know, an additional £12 billion of tax take, which has occurred because of fiscal drag, because those higher inflationary numbers in the forecast are dragging ever more people into paying ever more tax. And I will certainly give way to the honourable gentleman.
Can I thank the Shadow Minister? While I am not churlish about the extra money that the Labour government has given to pensioners, the fact of the matter is it has pushed people more into the threshold, and it means that the pensioners will pay more tax than they've ever paid. So when it comes to helping people, unfortunately this government have given it in one hand and taken it away with the other. Does he agree?
The honourable gentleman is absolutely right. Now, when it comes to the income tax threshold freeze, which has been extended for 3 years, even though they briefed out that it would probably just be 2, for 3 years, that means 780,000 more people going into tax for the first time, because the personal allowance will have been frozen for longer, and 920,000 people going into the higher rate tax bracket. In fact, by 29-30, around 1 in 4 people employed in this country, workers in this country, will be in the higher rate tax bracket. 1 in 4. The IFS has said that that measure is a clear breach of the Labour Party manifesto. The Chancellor herself accepted in the autumn budget of last year, when she said she would not come forward with this measure, that the reason why she would not come forward with it is it would hurt working people. It is very clear, and she repeated this yesterday, that this is a breach of the Labour Party manifesto. When it comes to young people, Madam Deputy Speaker, we hear that there will be a freeze to the student loan payment thresholds. We know that young people are already disproportionately impacted by the changes to national insurance, particularly the reduction in the threshold, which means that lower income earners, which includes younger people, will be disproportionately impacted by those tax changes. We know that the Employment Rights Bill, which is coming down the line, will make it far riskier to take younger people. No. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for. The party opposite speaks a lot about those who are not in employment, education or training, of which we have about 940,000. That legislation will do nothing to improve their life chances. It will make things worse. It will make it more risky to take those people on and employ them. The Honourable Lady has been very patient, and I will give way to her.
Right, Honourable Gentleman, for giving way. He seems to care so much about those who are not in education, employment or training. So why then did he allow 88,000 young people to become NEETs? And is he proud that when he left office, almost 1 million young people were not in any form of employment, education or training? Is this not the worst kind of hypocrisy?
Well, can I congratulate the Honourable Lady, firstly, of reading accurately from her telephone the whip circular question that's come out. We stand by our record. We stand by our record when we return. Absolutely. Absolutely. When we were in government, we were a job-creating machine. 4 million more jobs, 4 million more jobs under us than had been there before. When we left on the day of the general election, we had near record high level of employment, a near record low level of unemployment. Unemployment is now at a 5-year high. The gentleman shakes his head, but it happens to be true. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, one of the products or results of this budget for young people is there will be a continued lost generation of workers. And what about those who want to save, want to do the right thing, I will momentarily, who want to provide for their future in retirement? Should we not be encouraging them? Yeah. And what has this budget delivered on that front? Salary sacrifice, savaged. Savings tax, put up. The cash ISA, cut. We are punishing savers. And let me say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that under these measures we will see the reverberating effects of this for many generations and many years to come. I give way to my right honourable friend.
I'm very grateful to the Shadow Chancellor for giving way. The sad fact is that youth unemployment, that's 16 to 24-year-olds, is at a staggering 15% at the moment. Yeah. So on top of the national insurance hikes and the raise to the minimum wage, employers are unlikely to want to consider taking young people on. And that could have the disastrous effect that people who graduate from universities or do graduate from an apprentice will emerge from those having done a lot of work and not being able to get a proper job.
My honourable friend is precisely right, and I've set out the iniquitous impacts of the national insurance threshold reduction on younger people, and also the impact that the Employment Rights Bill will have in increasing the risks of employing younger people. That is self-evident and obvious, and businesses are saying it over and over again. If you put an employer in a position where he is faced with a young person who has no career track record, and yet your legislation, or should I say the party opposite's legislation, is saying that the employee, on day one, can take the employer to a tribunal for unfair dismissal, a claim which may get clogged up for 2 years, and which the lawyers advising the employer will probably conclude that the employer should give in and pay out even if the merits of the case do not warrant it. That is a recipe for higher youth unemployment. It is simple. It is basic economics. And look at the taxes that are being placed under this budget on rental income. Does the party opposite not realise that will lead to higher rents and fewer properties on the market? Does the party opposite not understand that if you tax the family home, you catch a lot of people, you catch the people who are maybe asset rich but are income poor? And I suppose the solution, Madam Deputy Speaker, will be to allow that liability to roll up and be paid on death. Yet another death tax at the hands of this government. Now, what is all this pain and taxation paying for? In large part, it is paying for more welfare. It is as simple as that. The two-child limit, scrapping the two-child cap, is a mistake. It is unfair, and it is unfair because those that are paying taxes and working hard and paying the taxes and doing the right thing have to take tough choices as to whether they can afford a larger family or not. And it is quite right and proper that those who are on, I will in a moment, those who are on benefits should have to face similar choices as well. And I give way to the honourable gentleman.
I'm sure the honourable gentleman is aware that both the majority of people impacted by this uplift and 2/3 of children in poverty actually have a parent in work. So this false dichotomy of those in work and out of work is simply incorrect. As a former DWP minister, you should know that.
Well, I have already set out the fact that the ruinous taxation policy of this government, including in the budget just yesterday, is to load up taxes on people who are in work, many of them not high earners. And the fact is that the impact of that tax is why the OBR themselves have concluded that for every year of this forecast, real household disposable income, in other words, the cost of living issues that people are facing, is going to deteriorate under those measures compared to the forecast back in the spring. The honourable gentleman's party is making poverty worse by making sure that work does not pay to the degree that it should. And the other point is inflation. The other point is inflation, Madam Deputy Speaker. If you run a policy of borrowing vast amounts of money, spending £500 billion over and above the plans that they inherited across this Parliament, and that was added to by over £100 billion just yesterday, do not be surprised if inflation is the highest in the G7, and if the IMF says it will be the highest in the G7 next year. What does high inflation, particularly on food, do to poverty? It drives poverty up, and therein lie the answers that the government needs to think about. Now, there is an alternative, Madam Deputy Speaker. The alternative is that you get on top and control government spending, and then you do the responsible thing, and this is our golden rule, whereby at least half of those savings go to driving down the deficit and the debt, but you then have the capacity to drive down taxes as well, and that is exactly what we set out at our conference. £49 billion worth of saving, £23 billion worth of savings on welfare, thanks to the solid, commendable work of my right honourable friend, the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary. We have found those savings. And it is a tragedy that the government, the honourable gentleman says, what are the savings? The savings are £23 billion on the welfare. It is a number, and as a member of the Treasury team, he should be familiar with numbers, but clearly is not. OK, so we will be bringing down the welfare bill and the savings are clear. I would direct him to the Centre for Social Justice's paper, which makes it very clear. Well, it's rather better than the resolution stuff that he produced when he was in office, I have to say, which makes it very clear where by changing the gateways into longer-term sickness and health benefits, which we did when we were in office, which we did. If the honourable gentleman wants to stop jabbering and start listening, he might learn something, okay? He might actually learn something. And you know, if the right honourable gentleman learns something, that might be for the good of his party and for this country. When we were in office, Madam Deputy Speaker, we made reforms to the work capability assessment that would have seen, according to the OBR's own scoring, 450,000 fewer people going on to those benefits. We were making a real difference in arresting the rise in the welfare bill. What did the government do on coming to office? It scrapped those on day one almost. It then came forward with its own proposals. And I hope when the honourable gentleman comes to his feet later, he can address this and he can talk us through what happened to his government's attempt to control the welfare bill. It got smashed up into a million pieces on the rocks of his own backbenchers. That's what happened. And that is the tragedy of much of this budget, is that economics is being driven by the internal politics of the Labour Party. You have a Prime Minister and you have a Chancellor whose position is now so precarious that they have to bob up and down like a cork on the tide when it comes to making policy at the whims of the backbenchers opposite. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is actually a certain melancholy about this budget. This budget is like Groundhog Day, an old song, the words seared into the collective mind, a socialist anthem for all time, that for he who has, then that must be taken away. For he who has not, then to him must be given. Not on the basis of any measure of fairness, as is suggested in the topic for debate today, but on a fundamental misunderstanding of basic economics. Economics is about resources, of course, but it is about incentives too. To he who has, I say, if you work hard, we applaud you, and we will incentivise you to work harder still, recognising your contribution to the common good. To the vulnerable, we say, we are there for you. But to others who have not, we say, here is not a handout, but the means for improvement. And Madam Deputy Speaker, for the socialist, distribution is all, and the means are never sufficiently willed. And the eternal lesson, and this is the lesson of this budget too, is that this path leads to all to be diminished. For an economy laden up with debt, with government spending spiralling still, with taxation touching skyward, will never burn bright. The whole will never grow. Not enough. It will languish. That is how the dreams of millions perish. Yesterday, the lingering flickers of hope died.